All right, what's good, guys? Today we are back with a steroid Q&A. Last time I did this shit was like 9 months ago, but I'm going to do it again. I put up a story post, a story Q&A on my Instagram, and you can see, okay, we got a shit ton of questions to go over today. So this is probably going to be a long one, but I'm going to break down as many questions as possible. A lot of you guys asked these, okay, so I'm going to try to break down as many as I possibly can. And if you want to ask me a question in the future, when it comes to these Q&As, go over to my Instagram. It's at Diagofit on all platforms. We go to Instagram specifically. The next time I put up a poll or a Q&A, you'll be able to ask your question. I'll be able to answer it here on one of these Q&As. But a lot of you guys are asking for this shit, so I am bringing it back. Now, let's go over the first question. I'm going to pump through these, okay? So first question here, okay, by Brady. Overall thoughts on ability to regain natural production and fertility after running gear. So when it comes to your PCT, when it comes to a cruise, it is, you're going to rebound. If you have a proper protocol, if you have a proper blueprint prior, you're going to rebound properly when it comes to your cycle. Okay. The people that don't are hopping on haphazardly. They don't have a plan set in stone. They hop on, they fuck up. Okay. They don't do any type of PCT, or they take a common bro PCT that you'll see on a forum or on fucking Reddit or by some random motherfucker that made a post or in person that's following another gym bro's advice based on a common PCT they've heard. Everyone's different genetically. This is something that you have to understand about gear. Everybody genetically is different. Everybody's going to be predisposed to different things prior, okay? Whether that's a heart condition, whether that is infertility, whether that is increased blood thickness, whether that is cholesterol problems. Everyone's going to have a different issue. So you need to figure out what that is for you specifically. As a general rule of thumb, when it comes to gear, you can't follow one goddamn cycle that everybody's running the past on these goddamn forums. Okay, when it comes to 500 mgs a test, run Nolvadex and Clomid for your PCT and you're going to be fine. It's like, no, okay? Everybody's going to have to run a different variation of compounds. Everyone's going to be pushing a different cycle for where they're at in their journey. Okay, it's not the same. You don't just hop on 500 mgs a test when you're starting out or test deck a D-ball and expect to get similar results to what some other motherfucker ran into. Everyone's going to be different, okay? So going back to the question, thoughts on ability to regain your natural production and fertility. It is absolutely possible. If you do it properly, you will rebound, okay? All you have to do is get a proper PCT, which is a post-cycle therapy set prior, if you're planning to hop off in full when you come off, or a cruise protocol. When I say cruise protocol, what am I talking about? I'm talking about going from a blast, which is super physiological amounts of exogenous hormone use, down to a cruise of TRT, which is testosterone replacement therapy, just to maintain optimal hormone values. Okay, for those of you that know you're going to be pushing this shit for the long haul, you're going to want to cruise, because if you're going to push massive cycles, okay, high doses of shit, very toxic suppressive compounds for 3, 4, 5 months, okay, then you want to understand that first off, you're going to be massively suppressed. Okay, at that point, you're basically telling yourself that you're going to be on for the long haul. You want to drop it to a cruise. That's when you cruise TRT. So you're going to be on a normal dose of test just to maintain your optimal hormone values around 1,000 nanograms of deciliters where you want to live at. Okay. You don't want to be below that shit. You don't want to be at 600, 500, even though 600, 700 is healthy for a natural. To perform optimally as a male, you want to be hovering around 1,000. Okay. That is a general rule of thumb as well. So as long as you deploy some type of PCT, whether again that's Nolvadex, whether that is tamoxifen, whether that is Clomid and clomiphene, okay, whatever the fuck it is, make sure that your LH and FSH, your HPTA system is getting stimulated, and your testicles as well are getting stimulated with HCG, human chorionic gonadotropin. This will be your main fertility compound to ensure that your testicles are getting stimulated, your semen volume is getting back up into normal. But if you have a concern about fertility whatsoever, okay, if you have any family members that have gone infertile for whatever fucking reason, it's very rare, but naturally, if anyone you know has gone infertile in your family tree, you want to get a fertility test prior. And even if you haven't, if having kids in the future is something of interest to you, you want to get a fertility check prior. You want to make sure that your semen volume is normal. You want to make sure that you're able to properly have kids prior to hopping on. As long as that's in range, you know you're in a very good place to take gear, because you have a 99.9% chance to push through this whole thing and be fine when you come off following a proper procedure. Now, there are specific people that are genetically predisposed already to fucked up fertility, okay, and fertility problems. If you're one of those people, you have to get a fertility check, okay, and if you don't know, get a fertility check. Either go to Amazon, either go to a fertility clinic, get it checked. Okay, because if you have fucked up fertility, you hop on a cycle, you suppress your goddamn testicles, it's going to be a disaster when you come off. It's going to make it a million times worse, okay? And those are the people that end up becoming infertile if they don't have a proper plan set and they do that shit haphazardly, okay? But to answer the question, yes, it is, okay? I don't want to spend too much time on these questions because there's so fucking many of them, but that's the answer to that one, okay? Best PCT for test and best PCT for Anavar. Okay, it's going to be heavily dependent. When it comes to test, okay, typically if you're just starting out and you're trying to post-cycle therapy and not cruise, it's going to be a combo of Nova and a combo of like clomiphene or some shit to boost your LH and FSH and to prevent estrogen rebound, okay? What's the difference between injectable versus oral steroids? So the difference, obviously, one is going to be an oral form, one is going to be a oil that you inject. Now the difference is that oral steroids, oral gear, is going to get processed through the liver, okay? So any oral you take, it's going to be heavily hepatotoxic. It's going to get processed through the liver. Your liver enzymes are going to increase. Naturally is what happens, okay? Your AST, ALT, alkaline phosphatase are going to boost up. Taking orals, that's why a lot of people will prefer injectables, because it does not get processed directly through the liver, okay? When it comes to like trend very potent compounds, you still can run into liver toxicity, but not to the degree of orals. These will always be the worst, and especially like Anadrol, like halotestin, even Winstrol, very toxic orals for your fucking liver. So you need to be mindful of that shit. That's the key difference between the two and why some people prefer injectable over oral. But with injectables, you have to pin it, okay? But if you're going to hop on gear in the first place, you have to get used to the idea of injecting. If you're not comfortable with that shit, don't hop on, because you're going to have to push testosterone one way or another. You don't want to hop on gear if you don't want to inject yourself. Just don't fucking do it, okay? Because you're gonna have to inject at one point or another. People that run orals only like fucking SARMs or Anavar, okay, they're gonna be in for disaster. It's just not going to be good. You need to have that stable base of tests running through your system so you don't run into hormone problems, right? That's very important. Got denied for TRT because of high PRL and AST. It was a finger prick test. Stay accurate. No, absolutely not. If it's a finger prick test, there's no way it could be that I don't know if you're talking about a TRT clinic or through a PCB. Okay, so when you go to a TRT clinic, they're going to hand you scripts out like candy. Okay, you can go in with perfect optimal test values, 1,000 nanograms a deciliter test. They will still hand you that motherfucking script. They will still give you that shit. Okay, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. A lot of people want to get tests regardless, and the more tests, the better, right? To get into that optimal range. But when it comes to a PCP or going through insurance, it's going to be a disaster, okay? They're going to only give out scripts to hypogonadal men and old fucking men that are basically in single-digit testosterone levels. If you're even at 300, they're considering that fine, even though that is so suboptimal to the point where you're not going to be performing at all optimally as a male. That's a horrific test level to be at. But a lot of people I see that go into their PCP or to get their goddamn script through insurance will be denied at 300, at 200, at 100 nanograms a deciliter test values. They are denied at this point because, again, they want to see you fucking crushed to get that script. So if you're even decent, or if you're not like in single digit to the point where you're not able to get out of bed, they're not handing you a script, okay? But TRT clinics, on the other hand, they're going to hand that shot like candy. Now, for the majority of people, you're just going to get your test through UGL. I mean, that is the go-to place if you're trying to hop on a blast, because even a TRT clinic, they're not going to give you blast level dosages, okay? If you're trying to hop on 500, 750, a gram of test a week, you're not getting that shit through TRT clinic. At most, they're going to give you 250, 300 milligrams a week is the most I've seen through a clinic is 300. That's definitely very high dose. But they're not giving you anything past that, okay? They just want to make sure that you have tests, but they get their money from giving people scripts, okay? It's, again, respect to the hustle of what they're doing. And, of course, you want men to be in that optimal range. But that's probably why you got denied, bro. It's because your test was still not single digit, okay, when it comes to PCP. How much of a calorie surplus should you eat on your first cycle? It's heavily goddamn depends. Such an open-ended question. You want to make sure you understand your own body weight. Okay. You want to make sure that you understand how you are going to react. Everybody's going to be different. Okay. You of course want to be in a surplus when it comes to your calories for whatever weight you're at. You want to make sure you're getting at least 1.2, 1.5, even up to 2x. Protein per pound of body weight. You have your carbs, okay, your fats. It's all going to depend on your genetics and how you react. Some people react better to a carb heavy diet when it comes to bulking. Some people react to a protein heavy diet when it comes to packing size. Either way, you're going to have to be in a caloric surplus. So that's something that you need to figure out for your own body weight. It's different for everybody, but you need to be in a caloric surplus for your specific body weight and you're going to be good. Can it be a problem if a person takes antidepressants and wants to hop on gear? So if you're taking antidepressants or you're taking any type of anxiety meds or depression meds, that's a sign of low test in general. You shouldn't be taking that shit, bro. If you get your test into range, you shouldn't be on any of this shit. This shit is so toxic. And this is one of the worst parts about society nowadays, that if you go to a doctor, can you tell them that I'm depressed or I'm not feeling well? Well, the first reaction from the doctor isn't, let's check your test values. The first goddamn reaction is, I'm going to put you on a depressant, an antidepressant, a fucking anxiety med. This is horrific, okay? This is destroying society. You should not be on this shit. If your test is in the optimal range, you should not be anxious. You should not be paranoid. You should not be fucking depressed. This is not something males should actively be fucking dealing with. This is something that is a common issue in society when it comes to people running into these problems, okay? And if you're on this shit, heavily advised to get off and heavily advised to get your goddamn hormone panel taken to see, okay, is your test at 300? Is it at 200? Okay, well, now you have your goddamn answer. You have low test. You're either hypogonadal or you have low test. Get it the fucking range, and you're not going to have to take these retarded goddamn medications that are doping people up and keeping them average and keeping them stuck in their position. Okay, that's my 2 cents on that shit. It is a very evil world that we're living in now when it comes to big pharma. It sucks, but it is what it is. Okay, how long until you can add another compound to your first cycle? Great question. So with your first cycle, ideally you want to push your lowest, most effective dosing of testosterone only for your first cycle all the way through. Okay, I have some clients that come to me, they're like, dude, I want to push it. I want to take Tren. I want to take Anavar, Winstrol. I want to take Halotest on my first cycle. I'm like, well, we're not going to do that shit. But what we'll do, okay, if you really want to pump the gas quick, which a lot of people do, okay, I understand it's an inpatient thing. You want to get a fast physique, okay, you start off with your lowest, most effective dosing of test first, at least for a couple months, because you want to see, okay, how do you react at 100 milligrams of test? How do you react at 150 milligrams of test? This is of real pharma grade tests or close to pharma from a reliable source. My inner circle knows the goddamn deal. But if you're doing this by yourself, you have to make sure that your test first off isn't underdosed and that it actually is testosterone. If it's not and it's underdosed, then you don't know what the fuck you're taking. So that's step one. But you want to make sure that you at least know you're taking real tests. And you want to make sure you at least run it for 2 months. So you can at least get roughly about 3 to 4 sets of labs done specifically for your hormone panel, just to see, okay, where are my test values at this specific dose of test, okay? Am I taking 150 milligrams and now I'm at 1,000? Am I taking 150 and I'm at 600? Okay, when you bump it up to 250, okay, now are you at 1,500 nanograms per deciliter? Are you at fucking 1,000? It's going to be different for everybody. You also have to see, where is your estrogen going to be at? Your prolactin, okay? But specifically E2, estradiol, when it comes to tests, when it comes to your first blast. You want to make sure you understand, are you a high aromatizer or not? Okay, if you're not a high aromatizer, you'll easily know because you're not going to have high estrogen pushing a super physiological dose of test, whether it's 300, whether it's 350, okay? If your E2's in range, you know that you are not a high aromatizer, but if it does start elevating, you have to get your AI dose in place prior to even considering adding another compound to the blast. Once you get a good system going when it comes to your testosterone dose, when it comes to understanding if you're a high aromatizer or not, making sure E2 is consistently in range for at least 2 different sets of labs, specifically your hormone panel, okay, you're going to get for at least 2 sets of labs, your E2's in range and your test is at that optimal point. that's when you can know, okay, look, this is how I react to tests. Now we can think about adding possibly some Anavar to the shit. But even then, for your first cycle, okay, at that point, you're going to want to push the blast for 3 months max. That's 12 weeks. So pushing Anavar for a month or some other mild compound like Masteron or like NPP or some shit, 1 month is not enough data for you to understand how the compound's going to react in your system. Some are longer esters. Okay, Anavar is going to be quicker, but you still want to give yourself enough time to get those labs done to really understand what's happening. So if you really want to be impatient with this, okay, I understand you want fast gains. A lot of people do, at least. If you really want to pump the gas, that's what you want to do. You want to wait 2 solid months until you add another compound to the cycle. But the smartest thing to do is going to be to just push that low dose of test for the whole first cycle so that you really get a good understanding of how you're going to react specifically for 3 months, okay? And then your next cycle, that's when you add another compound. That's when you can start experimenting. But the first cycle should always be that trial and error stack. So that's going to be that one. Yo, bro, you should come to the Arnold's next month. I might. Okay, I might. I think Hussein and I are going to do a fucking video. I'm trying to get his blood work done. He said he offered me $500K and he still stands by it. On my most recent video, just commented on that shit. He's like, yeah, let's run it. So I'm trying to sort that with Hussein. I might be at the Arnold. So if you guys are going, I might see you there. 250 mgs of test and 20 mgs of Anavar, good for a beginner cycle. It's absolutely amazing for a beginner cycle, but not for your first cycle, as I just mentioned. Okay, this is excellent for like your second stack or hopping into an intermediate shred. If you're ever going to push Anavar on top of test, this is a intermediate shred now. Now you're hopping into intermediate. Whenever you're stacking compounds, you're now considered an intermediate user. You're past that rookie phase, that beginner phase of test only. Now you're an intermediate user if you start stacking compounds. So this is excellent for intermediate shred. You definitely can utilize this to bulk, but if you're trying to use the compound most optimally, I would deploy maybe NPP, EQ on top of test to bulk. But for shredding, Anavar, Mass, Winnie-Ks are excellent beginner-friendly options. Winnie's a little bit more advanced because of the liver hepatotoxicity, but test and Anavar, excellent beginner stack if you're past that rookie phase. What to take to prevent acne, gout, and hair loss? So this is a great question. Okay, first off, you need to ask yourself what's going to cause these sides when it comes to acne, gout, and hair loss. So this is going to be caused due to heavy androgenicity from compounds. Okay, if you're taking compounds that are heavily androgenic like Tren or Mast, or compounds that are going to fuck with your DHT, specifically just dihydrotestosterone. Okay, when your DHT values increase, you're taking heavily related DHT derivatives. This is going to cause these sides. These are all masculinizing related sides. Each will have separate mitigation strategies, but you want to get to the compound selection first. So if you are going to be, if you're going to be genetically prone or sensitive to these things, you want to understand that prior to taking them, specifically like Mast, Tren. Okay, these are compounds that for acne and hair loss, these are very bad. Specifically, Mast is horrific for hair loss. It's a mild compound, but when it comes to the heavy androgenic sides, it's there. Okay, it's there with that compound. So if you are prone to hair loss, you want to make sure that you get a DHT blocker, okay, like finasteride, dutasteride, something that's going to prevent hair loss if you're going to push this compound. But if you're already prone, I wouldn't even push a DHT derivative, right? You want to understand that you understand this shit prior to even pushing the compound. When it comes to gyno, okay, this is a completely separate side that can be caused due to an influx of estradiol or prolactin. So this is a completely separate topic off of the DHT derivative compounds. You want to make sure that you understand if you're a high aromatizer or not. That's why you go through that rookie phase of test only to see how you're going to react to that. If you take a 19-nor, Met, Tren, okay, this can cause prolactin spikes too. So now you've heard Tren be used with 2 separate categories of sides, which is an influx of estradiol, prolactin. Well, Tren is not going to aromatize, but prolactin specifically to 19-nor and the heavy androgenicity. So you're going to run into those. Acne is due to DHT as well, due to heavy androgenicity. So you want to make sure you understand what you're taking first. Okay, you want to make sure you understand how genetically you're going to react to shit first. Now you can make more educated decisions based on your own goddamn genetics and how you're going to react to things, okay? What's the best oral test booster? Nothing. Okay, if you're going to want to increase your test, take goddamn testosterone. You want to take the bioidentical hormone. that's going to increase your test. Okay, when it comes to test boosters and all this weird shit that people sell at supplement shops and oral test, like it's all toxic. Okay, it's gonna get processed through the liver. Yes, there's natural supplements like ashwagandha and all this shit, but it's not gonna make a goddamn difference at the end of the day. Like, yes, it can boost your test up slightly, maybe 50 nanograms deciliter, maybe 100. Okay, and that's really good for a natural. Or like in clomiphene, for example, which is a post-cycle therapy compound, but a lot of people use it to get that test boost because it's going to increase your LH-FSH. It's going to boost and stimulate your natural hormone production, so you can get that slight boost, but it's not making a fucking dent with anything with your physique. Okay, I'm going to be very goddamn transparent with this. A lot of people are trying to sell in clomiphene, are trying to sell these test boosters. It's not going to do you justice as test would. Okay, so if you're trying to boost your test values, first off, get your hormone panel done. Make sure that you're not in a suboptimal range, and if you are, get on fucking TRT. Okay, just boost that shit back into the range it's supposed to be at as a male. You'd be surprised. The majority of people nowadays are not in an optimal range, and it's not your fault. It's because of all the consumerism shit being pushed. Everything in your food, okay, the water you're drinking, the phone that you're watching this video on, or your computer, your TV. Okay, that shit's decreasing tests too. Okay, everything's decreasing test values nowadays. So to answer the question, there is no best oral test booster. Take fucking test. Do not bitch out on the pin. If you're going to want to boost your test values up, take testosterone. That is the best thing I can tell you regarding that. All right. Is peptides considered gear? No, it's not. It's a completely separate topic. Two separate things. Okay. Gear, when people say gear, they're talking about anabolic steroids. They're talking about exogenous hormones. Peptides are completely separate compounds. They're two separate categories. A peptide, such as HGH, such as enclomiphene, such as GHKU, such as SLUP, okay, whatever the fuck it is, okay, melanotan. These are not anabolic steroids. Okay, anabolic steroids are testosterone, are masteron, are winstrol, or tren, everything I just fucking mentioned prior. These are anabolic steroids considered gear. Peptides are not gears. They're two separate things, okay? Peptides are not going to fuck with your hormone values. That's the beauty of peptides. You can take them, and most of the time, it's more side free. There are peptides that come with massive sides, but peptides is such a vague term because there's so many peptides you can take. There's so fucking many different types of peptides for different use cases, okay, that you can't really just say that all peptides are the same. There's thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of peptides, okay? It's just very difficult to categorize all peptides in one, but to give you the short and simple answer, peptides are two separate things, okay? What do you think of test NPP and VAR cycle? So this is a great intermediate stack, but if you're trying to utilize the compounds for their optimal purpose, okay, I know that some people, like Rich Panda, for example, was taking Deca, Masteron, and Test. This is not something that I would push for any of my clients, people that work with me, but it worked for him, okay? And you're not going to know unless you trial shit on your own, on what works for your body specifically. Now, Test, MPP, VAR, the reason I wouldn't push this, okay? These are all mild compounds. So testosterone, Test, NPV, Nandrolone phenylprop. Okay, it's the fast-acting version of Nandrolone, and then VAR, which is Anavar. Okay, so these are all very, very mild compounds. Very good options. But VAR, okay, the best use case for taking VAR is going to be in a shredding context. NPP, the best context to take this shit is in a bulk, okay, because you're going to get that joint lubrication effect from the Nandrolone. You're going to get that increased muscle building effect, that strength from the NPP. But VAR, okay, is better when you're in a deficit. It's going to allow you to maintain that mass while in a deficit. It's going to give you that more sharp tone look. Okay, it will aid you with increase your muscle mass, absolutely, which is why you can take it in a bulking context as well. But like the most solid use case can be during a shred, and for NPP, like I said, a bulk. Now, you can combine the compounds in one when it comes to test as your base, your foundation to the cycle, NPP for the joint lubrication, for the increased muscle building properties, the strength, and then VAR to get that tone look as well. But when you're pushing this shit, you want to maximize results. You don't just want to have a peak look while you're on, okay, and then come off and lose everything. You want to maximize the results. So are you trying to prioritize gaining size? Are you trying to prioritize shredding? Okay, which one are you trying to prioritize? Because when you get on, you want to utilize this shit. You want to run through the blast, and then when you come off, you want to keep whatever you got, the majority of it. Okay, if you're restricting yourself on what you're getting on the cycle just to look peak during the cycle, then you're going to get minimal results when you come off. That's why you want to either prioritize gaining size or shredding on a cycle so that you can keep that when you come off the blast. That's my 2 cents. Retta on a bulk thought. So this is, all my growth hormone just fucking dropped. Retta on a bulk. So if you're asking this, you don't know what retatrutide is. So Retta, whenever someone says Retta, okay, retatrutide. This is a peptide. So this is something that will absolutely suppress appetite. It's a GLP agonist. It's a newest variation that's come out. The original was semaglutide, which is Ozempic, okay? Next one was Turs, Mounjaro, okay? And then tirzepatide, okay? The last, most recent one that's come out that's most trending is retatrutide, okay? So this shit will have a heavy appetite suppression effect. Okay, so you definitely would want to push this in a shred as opposed to a bulk. If you're taking this during a bulk, you are just completely counteracting what you're trying to do, because it's going to make it impossible to eat. You're not going to want to eat. You're going to force feed everything that you put in your body. It's not going to be good. The only reason you take Retta is to shred down, to reduce that appetite noise. Okay, that's why you take that goddamn compound. So do not take this during a bulk, please. Let's take outside mass primo trend for a 3-month summer cycle. So, okay, so when it comes to test, first off, you want to have test as the base to anything you run. You don't want to run trend, primo, mass on top of each other without a test base. That's a disaster waiting to happen. Now, I know that a lot of people, they want to look sick as fuck during the summer and want to show off their physique, go to raves, go to the beach, pull some chicks. Okay, I understand, I've been there. But you don't want to just take trend to boost, have that peak look during summer. Okay, this is a disaster waiting to happen, especially if you're newer to this shit. Okay, trend is a very advanced compound. It's going to come with massive sides. I understand, okay, that some people might get caught up in that. Okay, I want to look sick. I want to get that chick. Let's fucking rip the trend. Fuck it, let's go. Don't do it. Do not do it. You can experience very similar results as trend if you simply take test, maybe VAR, maybe mast, and primo, okay, for a shred. Okay, because you want to gain size in the off season during the winter when you're not really going to be going out. Okay, you're going to be just dialed grinding. Okay, that's why people call it the winter arc, that bullshit you see online. You gain size when you're not going out. When you're trying to show it off during the summers, when you shred. You shred all that water bloat, that fat off your frame, and you show the size that you packed in the off season. Okay, and this is why it's good to take a shred sack during the summer if you live somewhere where that's the culture. Okay, I've lived in California my whole life, so this has been a culture for me every goddamn year. Okay, you go out to the beach during the summer, you have a good goddamn time, pull chicks on the beach, go to events, go to raves, do whatever the fuck. Okay, but trend is not going to be your best option. Trend is not going to be the best option. Yes, you'll see quick goddamn results, but you're going to be a mess everywhere else. Now, I have trend videos on YouTube. I've talked about trend so many fucking times. Some people call me the king of trend because of how many videos I've made on that shit. If you've seen my content, you understand why it's not a good idea, okay? But I don't want to go into too much detail on that now. Simply, if you're trying to look sick for the summer, take a mild intermediate stack, okay? So like test, like I said, test, mass, primo, VAR. Not even the primo, fuck the primo, because primo is so fucking difficult to get nowadays, real shit at least. Test VAR mass, or even test mass Winnie, or test VAR Winnie, okay? You don't want to stack two orals on top of each other, but still VAR is very mild. Winchell is going to be more toxic. Okay, there's a lot more better options out there than trend, okay? That's my 2 cents on that. But if you take trend, yes, you're going to look like a sick cunt and you're going to look sick as fuck on the beach. But if you're trying to get chicks, it's like you're going to be a mess with the girls because your mental state's going to be all over the place. You're going to be pissed. They're going to think you're angry. It's not going to be good. It's not going to be fucking good, okay? So just keep that in mind too. Do a video on methyl trend. Very good idea. That is noted. That is a very fucking crazy compound. So that's definitely noted, brother. Does a 27 gauge 5/8 needle work to inject tests in the shoulder, and how can I make the oil go faster? So this is something with injecting. Now, this needle right here is a 2.5 mil needle. This is a 1.5 inch long. This is a 25 gauge needle. Whenever it's orange, it's gonna be 25. If you see blue needles, it's gonna be 23. Okay, pink ones typically are 18. So whenever you get lower on the scale with the numbers, so if it's 27 gauge, it's gonna be a skinnier needle. If it's 25, it's gonna be a little bit thicker. You can see the needle. Okay, let me put it up right here. You can see the needle very thin, okay, very thin. You can easily pump this shit in and out of your wherever the fuck you're trying to pin it out. That's why I use 25 gauge. I used to use 23. It's just a thicker needle, so it leaves more scar tissue. But if it's 27, it's going to be skinnier. Okay, you go to 25, it's going to be a little more thick. Okay, you go to 23, a little more thick. 18 is the goddamn horse tranquilizer needle. Okay, that's what you used to pull the gear out of the vial with. I know some guys that have pinned with 18 gauge. Believe it or not, it's not good. Okay, a lot of scar tissue. But when you're pinning in your shoulder, 1.5 inches is definitely too big for shoulder. I personally have used 1 inch to 1.5 inches for a very long time on my shoulders. I still do that to this day. It's part of my program. But I wouldn't suggest doing this shit if you're newer. Okay, you want to use a shorter needle length. So like I said, 1.5 inches, but 5/8 is going to be like down here. Okay, it's going to be a very short needle size. And 27 gauge is so goddamn skinny. This is an excellent needle to pin in your shoulder, okay? Now, keep in mind, the reason why I used to pin 23 gauge is because I was pinning a lot of fucking gear. I was pulling the fucking plunger down all the way here, but I was taking 3 mil syringes, okay? The skinnier the needle is, the harder it is going to be to push the oil into your injection site. You're going to have to pin very slow, even when you're pushing this shit with all your might. Okay, it's going to go very slow. It's going to go very slow. Now, the thicker the needle, the quicker it's going to pin. So this is a common issue I see with a lot of people. You obviously don't want to be sitting there with a fucking needle in your shoulder for an hour, just sitting there like this, trying to push the oil in. Okay, you don't want that. It sucks. So if you test out a needle and the oil is going in too slow, maybe look at a thicker needle. Some people can get away with taking insulin syringes for their test. Okay, insulin needles, which are very skinny, that are going directly into their shoulder or directly into their ventroglute, whatever it is, okay, and be fine. Some people need thicker needles. I need thicker needles. So it's going to be heavily dependent on you. You're going to have to test this out for yourself. But in general, a 27 gauge 5/8 is perfect for your shoulders. Why do people take PEDs knowing people die in their 20s? Why do they take a large amount of toxic teen? So I think this is a new guy that probably is just now following me, because if you look at my content, okay, I personally love steroids. I love gear, okay? It's an amazing thing to utilize. Yes, a lot of people look at it as degenerate activity because they've been painted in such a bad light by motherfuckers like Togi and motherfuckers that are out here doing these very toxic gear transformations. And look at my physique. 2 months in on trend, I have gone from zero to hero. Like, this is what's fucking up the industry. When you utilize steroids right, this is one of the best possible drugs you can take, okay, in general. Would you rather drink alcohol and fuck up your life, okay, for a good night, or would you rather take a performance enhancement drug that is going to aid you with self-development and bettering yourself and become the most optimal version of yourself as you possibly can as a male? Which one are you going to choose? Are you going to choose a rec drug? Are you going to choose an upper, a stim? Are you going to choose a downer, an opiate? Okay, are you going to get hooked to rec drugs instead of PEDs? Which one are you going to fucking choose? This is just a common debate you'll see people make, but that's the way I look at it, okay? Anything you do can be toxic in excess, right? If you go out to McDonald's, okay, what's better? Eating a fucking McDonald's meal or getting on test? It's obvious getting on test better. If you're pushing a blast, you're going to push super physiological doses of this shit. Yes, it's going to be toxic. But eating fucking McDonald's as a habit is very toxic too. And that shit is probably worse than a cycle, than 1 3-month cycle. So you really have to keep that in mind too. I think that gear is amazing to utilize, but so many people do it wrong. It gives it a bad rep. It gives it a bad light. If you are on top of your health, you get your labs done prior. I say this in all my videos because it is fucking true. You get your labs done pre, mid, and post blast prior. Okay, prior is most important to get a baseline of your system, how it's reacting. Okay, when it comes to your lipid panel, your cholesterol, your cardiac system, when it comes to your blood thickness, your fucking CBC, your hormone panel, where's your estradiol at? Where's your test at prior? Where the fuck is your organs at? Your CMP, your comprehensive metabolic panel? You need to make sure all this shit is dialed. Your BP, okay? And I keep this on hand, and I check this every fucking day for myself because it's important. Your blood pressure, okay? You want to get a cuff and you want to make sure you're on top of this shit. Make sure you're on top of your resting heart rate as well, okay? Get your heart scan done. When I say heart scan, you don't necessarily have to get an actual heart scan, but you want to get an echocardiogram. You want to get an EKG, which is an electrocardiogram, okay? Make sure that you at least don't have arrhythmias. Make sure you at least don't have any type of heart predispositions happening or genetic heart disease. That's how Ziz went out, okay? It's how a lot of people go out hopping on this shit haphazardly, not knowing that you have a fucking heart problem or a congenital heart problem or some type of atrophy already happening, or maybe you have plaque buildup prior. Okay, you already have artery problems happening. You have to understand this before you hop on, dude. Like, this is what causes problems. So, besides that rant, okay, this is just something very important that, I personally think gear is awesome if you utilize it properly, but if you do too much, okay, you get hooked because it can be psychologically addictive. It can be very detrimental to your health. But that's the whole point of my content, is making sure that people are doing this in the safest way possible to experience the pros and negate the cons. You don't want to run to the cons when it's preventable, right? What's a good first cycle to start with for weight loss and body recomp? So if you're newer, okay, you can shred on test, okay, for your first cycle. Your diet's everything with shredding at the end of the day, okay? And that's why these GLPs are so popular now, because it helps you stick to a diet. It reduces appetite noise. It suppresses appetite. That's why they're so fucking popular. America is struggling with obesity. America is struggling with this food, okay? It's being pushed. Unhealthy food is being pushed to you at the grocery store. Even if you think you're getting healthy food, okay, it's not healthy. Just look at the ingredients in every goddamn food item that you get. Unless you're hunting the shit yourself, unless you're killing an elk and sashing that shit, you don't know where the food is coming from. You don't know what the fuck you're ingesting. Okay, the majority of it is very unhealthy, and it is definitely causing a weight problem in this country. But that's why you see GLPs going crazy and they're going mainstream, because it works. It works to help people specifically stick to a fucking diet. There's nothing else about these compounds that you're going to see. Yes, there's some slight benefits, but the only reason that they work so effectively is because it suppresses your appetite. So it allows you to not eat. Your diet is what shreds you down. Now, when you are trying to recomp, this is another story, because you are trying to maintain muscle mass and get that dense popped look while you reduce the fat, while you reduce the water weight. That's a completely separate topic, okay? That's when a cycle is going to be in your best interest to take. As a matter of fact, if you take a GLP and you're not getting enough food in, it can be detrimental to your recomp, okay? So it's a very touchy point when taking these GLPs. But if you're going to take a cycle and you're new for a recomp, test VAR, okay? Test mass VAR, test Winnie Mast. Okay, these are excellent recomp blasts. Obviously, Trent is the king of recomps, but it's not friendly for beginners. So that's my 2 cents on that, okay? Is there a cycle I can run to get my cardio up? I'm trying to train for an ultra marathon. Absolutely. There are definitely options that you can take. Now, this is a touchy one too. So carnitine is going to be an option. This is not a exogenous hormone. It's not considered gear, but it is a great compound to take specifically for endurance. Okay, I took this shit when I was boxing. Excellent compound all around. Now, if you're trying to push a actual anabolic, EQ is excellent. This is equipoise. Okay, originally this was deployed in horses, and specifically race horses. Okay, when it came to horses that people were betting on to win goddamn races around the track. The reason they deployed this shit is because it boosts up RBC, hematocrit, and hemoglobin. If you have an influx of this shit, you're going to have elevated endurance, elevated cardio. It's going to make it easy. But there is a downside, a flip side to this coin. Because if you get too high of RBC, hematocrit, hemoglobin, you're going to run into blood thickness. Okay, and it can lead to blood clots, which can cause an instant fatality. So it goes both ways. There's pros and cons to these compounds. Now, the reason why EPO, okay, it's a very common choice when it comes to elite athletes. You see Olympic competitors taking this shit. You see Lance Armstrong taking this shit, okay? Cyclists. A lot of guys. You see, what the fuck's his name? Dillashaw, TJ Dillashaw, you've seen him take EPO UFC fighters because it is so fucking effective, dude. It's going to increase RBC microhemoglobin through the goddamn roof, but it can increase it so goddamn high that you can easily run into a blood clot like this, okay? It happens quick. EPO is the most toxic, the most dangerous. Equipoise, I always call light EPO because it's more mild, but it's still very toxic, okay? And it still will increase that blood thickness pretty bad. Okay, but it does work. It does work to increase endurance. So I would say if you're new, Cardarine or Equipoise are going to be two solid options to get your endurance up. Now, on the flip side, okay, we talk about Tren. Tren is horrific for cardio. Do not take Tren for cardio. Horrific compound for cardio. I mean, it's so fucking bad. All right, let's go here. Yo's OS Gear Legit. I'm not going to talk about sourcing. But again, my inner circle knows the deal. Okay, so I'm going to leave it at that. How would you run Anadrol if this was your first time? With what? Aromacin? Okay, so Anadrol specifically is a oral compound. It's going to give you insane strength. It's going to come with insane liver toxicity. Now, you're not going to understand how this compound works until you trial it. So you want to start with a very low dose of this shit on top of tests. Make sure you understand, okay, am I running into liver toxicity? Okay, what type of support do I need? Do I need milk thistle, NAC, TUDCA? You most likely should be taking this on top of the Anadrol, the A-bombs regardless. But you're not going to understand how you're going to react before you take it, okay? Support, typically all you'll need for Anadrol is going to be those liver subs, okay? That's going to be the most important thing with Anadrol because it is liver toxic. All right, a little late. How much usually? Okay, we're not going to go into that here. How much do I charge for my coaching? So you can go to Diagofit.com. Okay, it's where you can sign up or apply for coaching with me. I do offer coaching for cycle coaching. Okay, to gain muscle with minimal risks, what should be stacked along with Test E? So again, going back to those beginner, intermediate bulk stacks. Okay, NPPQ, amazing fucking options. Even Anadrol, you could definitely take this. This is a more advanced compound. Okay, D-ball is a compound I see a lot of people take, but it is not the most optimal compound to use anymore, okay? And same goes with DECA. This is a common bro bulk back in the days, Test and D-ball. Now we have seen that there are better options to take nowadays when it comes to even injectable Anadrol, okay? Or when it comes to Anadrol itself is going to be better than fucking D-ball. I don't think D-ball or DECA are solid options. When it comes to DECA, this is nandrolone decanoate. It's a long-acting version, long-acting ester of nandrolone. Now you look at NPP, nandrolone phenylprop, fast-acting ester of nandrolone. We're looking at compounds. Okay, if you can take a fast-acting ester, you want to take that as opposed to a long ester for one reason only. Okay, if you run into sides, you want that shit to go in and out of your system quick. You don't know how you're going to react to specific compounds until you take them, okay? So let's say you run into a side from DECA, but DECA can last in your system upwards of 6 weeks, upwards of a month, upwards of 2 months. Some people have had that shit in their system 4 to 6 months, okay, after a fucking pin. Now let's say you run into a side, you run into bloating, you run into some type of prolactin problem, you run into acne, hair loss, anything from the 19-OR. You want it to be in and out of your system so that you can mitigate that side, negate it, and then move forward. You don't want it lingering in your system for a long fucking time. That's why I always advise people to go with a short-acting ester as opposed to a long-acting ester, okay? Can you microdose Tren Hex? You can definitely microdose Tren. And I know people that have done it with success, but it's still going to come with the sides. I mean, you're not getting past the sides of Tren. I understand that people want to take it. It's a crazy compound, but you're not getting past the sides. I mean, Tren is just so fucking toxic. Even if you're taking at the lowest dose possible, you're running into sides. Okay, so keep that in mind. How much milligrams of Winstrol should I take daily? It's going to be heavily dependent on your genetics. Best supplement for heart health. Excellent question. Okay. So the best supplement that I would take always is right here. Fish oil. Okay. Best single supplement you can take for your cardiovascular system for heart health, and over-the-counter supplement for your heart. Fish oil. It doesn't get better than fish oil. This is going to be your top fucking choice. Whenever you run a cycle, you want to have this shit on deck. You want to be taking fish oil at the minimum 2 grams a day. Okay, 2 to 3,000 milligrams is amazing. Okay, for these specifically, it's 1,000 milligrams per serving, so you take about 2 to 3 of these a day. Now, when it comes to fish oil, they're pretty big pills. Okay, if you know anything about gear, okay, you know about fish oil now, but you can see they're pretty big pills. They're like horse pills. So if you're not used to taking big sups, it's going to get some used to swallow some big things. But that is definitely my top choice when it comes to an OTC sup for heart health. That is definitely an excellent choice. What made you want to take gear? So this is a great question. This will be one of the last ones. I think this has been going on for a minute now. I don't want it to be too long. So let's see, what made you want to take gear? I'm going to get a little bit deep here. Okay. So why did I personally start taking gear? Now, if you guys look at my past, okay, I have some photos on Instagram, but not a lot of people might know about my personal past. Okay. I used to be a fuck up, big time loser. Okay, I used to give in to vices left and right when it came to pornography, when it came to prostitutes, when it came to rec drugs, when it came to alcohol, when it came to partying, escaping, okay? Junk food, eating fucking fast food every day, like hot Cheetos, Takis, all this shit, okay? Endless scrolling on socials, video games, every single vice you can think of, I was giving into that shit, okay? So if you look at me in the past, I was in and out of jail pretty frequently, okay? Specifically because of drugs, evading, okay, DUI, just typical drug related issues, like trespassing, what the other ones, assault was one of them because I was fucked up. There's a lot of things that happened in my past that made me hit a rock bottom state, okay? And that's why a lot of the content I push out is guiding people away from these vices, because I know the vices. I've been literally strung out on the fucking streets, okay, in a goddamn alley with a bunch of other homeless people, okay? I've never been homeless, but I was there. I was with those fucking people. So it's not a good place to be in, okay? When you wake up in reality, stop in reality, and you're in a fucking tent with homeless people getting strung out on shit, it's not a good place to be in, okay? And like waking up in jail too and snapping into reality in jail, okay, because you're so fucked up and now you're in a cell and you're like, what the fuck has happened? Like, you don't understand what has happened. I was a big fuck up, guys, like big. And I was a losing character in life and I hated my life, okay? And there's a point, there was a clear switch that had happened in my personal life when I was doing too much stretch in SDCJ, San Diego County Jail. And I was thinking to myself in a cell, I'm like, I can't do this shit anymore, okay? It's either I'm going to do everything right and flip my entire life around, or I'm just, there's no point to be here. I mean, there's no fucking point to be here. I'm just going to either take my own life or just charge to the goddamn game and go do some crazy shit and get offed out by someone else, okay? Pretty much that is what my mindset was. So once I got out of that motherfucker, it was game on, okay? And I had learned about gear through a lot of the people I met in that whole system, okay? I was in and out of jail very frequently, but when I was doing that stretch, a lot of people are telling me about it. A lot of people are telling me about gear because a lot of the motherfuckers in there have done it, okay? A lot of the guys are jacked fucking juice heads in the can, okay? There's a lot of fuckers that take that shit in there and they're like, bro, you should hop on. I was definitely fucked up, but I was still semi-fit, okay? I've always had like a fast metabolism, so I was all semi-fit. And also I liked working out too, okay? Prior, even though I was all fucked up, I still liked working out. So I learned about it in there. When I got out, I figured out a source, very easy to figure out, and I started taking that shit, okay? But I did everything wrong. I did everything fucking wrong, dude. But my main priority was just self-development and improvement when it came to my physique, my mindset, everything. And I knew that the best way to do that shit was to get increased testosterone, because what you'll see is a lot of people fucking up and giving into vices have low tests. And this is something I understood. So I got my test into range and I didn't even know where the fuck it was. I didn't get a baseline set of labs, nothing, okay? I just started off taking test. High dose of that shit too, 500 milligrams, okay? Your typical bro advice, 500 milligrams a test. So that's what I started taking, and I ran every side in the book. Every side in the goddamn book, dude. I took, before I even got a set of labs done in general, I had already taken tests, DECA, D-ball, Tren, NPP, Anadrol. I'd taken all this shit before I even got a set of labs done. Okay, so I'd already fucked myself pretty bad prior. I ran, like I said, every side in the book. But that's what really made me want to start, because I was in rock bottomed out scenarios. That's why I can look at people online whether it's a kid that's hopping on gear or whether it's people giving into partying and escaping all this shit. I've been there. I've fucking been there. So I understand. Yeah, I understand the perspective and the viewpoint of people doing it. Okay, when it comes to beating your shit off all the time. Okay, I was doing that shit. So I understand the mindset of people that are currently doing it. When it comes to endlessly scrolling, when it comes to watching, binging TV, when it comes to video games, when it comes to junk food, when it comes to giving into rec drugs and alcohol, I've been there. Dude, like I have fucking been there, and it was a very dark time in my life. I've been to some very, 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 very dark places, and I'm surprised I'm still here. Okay, there's a lot of periods in that time span of a few years, of like 5 years, that I should have been gone. I mean, there's angels watching over me for sure. That's why I don't take my life for granted. I want to make sure that everybody understands this stuff, that you can fix your life. You can get out of vices. You can go from 0 to 100. You can do it. Like if you are average now, you can fix things. You can remove vices, start building up discipline, get your mindset dialed in, optimize your tests so it makes it a million times easier when it comes to just having that optimal drive and work ethic and all this shit just as a normal male should be functioning, right? I understand the angle because I've been there. And it saddens me to see how many people are fucked up now and doing this shit. Because like I said, that's been me, dude. So a lot of the times when I'm talking to the camera, when I'm talking to you specifically, I'm talking to my past self. Because I would have wanted someone like me to be presenting this shit to me when I was a fuck up. Because it would have made my life a lot easier. And that's what I'm trying to do for you guys. I'm trying to make your lives a lot fucking easier with this whole journey, okay? Because it's very beneficial to take compounds like this, especially if you're involved with anything I just said prior. Very beneficial to get your tests into range, okay? Because it will fix your life. It will fix a lot of things. But it's very saddening to see, like even a lot of the guys I work with, you know what I mean? It's very sad to see the situations they're in. And I don't want to see people fuck up. I don't want to see people in that goddamn space. It's very dark. There's a lot of evil in this fucking world. There's a lot of bad things that that happen actively. Okay, there's a lot of bad things that people are doing that are just unaware that they're even involved in. Okay, and that's why everyone stays average when it comes to all this shit, like junk food and porn and all this stuff. Like people are actively doing these things, but they don't realize they're doing it. They don't realize that's what's fucking up their life. That's what's actively messing up their life and turning them into a fucking loser and a piece of shit that gets treated with no respect, that has no confidence. Okay, it doesn't get any chick they want to get with. That is just looked at as a bag of trash because that's what they are, but they are unaware of why. Okay, so that's why. Okay, for people that are just watching my shit, my main point is get your tests into range, because this will solve a lot of problems. Like the motherfucker that asked me about, can I take antidepressants with a blast? Bro, you shouldn't need antidepressants. You shouldn't need that shit. Why the fuck are you depressed? Like as a male, you should not be depressed, bro. You should not fucking be depressed. If you are depressed, your test is out of range, dude. Like this single variable fixes guys. This turns males into males, dude. Like you see guys nowadays and they're feminine as fuck and they're weak and they can't do shit that normal and natural males could do 100 years ago. Okay, and guys are fucking weak and acting like females nowadays, and all this weird shit happening. This is not how males should be. It's not how males should be. Get your fucking test in a range, dude. And if you're aware of these problems, okay, and you can't go 2 seconds out of your way to go order a fucking set of labs, get a hormone panel done, and figure out your fucking testosterone values, then you are doing this to yourself. If you're involved in this goddamn trap of vices, you're doing it to yourself. If now that you've seen this, now you're aware of it and you still choose to not do it, you're doing it to yourself. Okay, so my whole thing is making people aware of this and just to get their test in a range. Like that's the first thing you do. After that, progression becomes a breeze. I'm telling you, bro. I wanted to do that little rant. There's so many other fucking questions here. Like if you guys see this shit, okay, there's a lot that I'm not going to be able to get to. There's too many, but I hope you guys enjoyed this. I'm going to be doing these consistently. I know a lot of you guys asked for this, so I wanted to put it out there. But let me know if you guys enjoyed. I'm not going to do any edits here. I'm just going to post it raw. so that you guys can just watch this all the way through. I know my other videos sometimes are edited very quick, where it's like boom, 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 and quick fucking cuts. I'm not going to do that this time. Okay, those other videos I'm going to leave them the way they are, but I just wanted to keep this as raw as possible so you guys really understand what I'm trying to say here. So if you guys like and subscribe, comment below what you want me to make a video on next, and we'll go from there. But that last point, like, seriously, dude, I need you to really understand that I care about the person that I'm talking to right now. Okay, I know that I'm not actively talking to you in person, but like, if it was me, okay, if it was me a few years ago on the other side of this, God, like, that's who I'm talking to, okay? Because I know a lot of people watching this are me a few years ago that I'm talking to. So I want that specific person I want to talk to. I want to help you. I want to make sure that you are not dealing with that shit that I had to deal with, okay? It's a shitty goddamn life to live when you're deep in vices. It is a shitty fucking life. But you can 180 that shit, dude. You can 180 it, okay? And gear is such an amazing thing to utilize to get there, to just optimize your tests, not even take a cycle, just optimize your tests, okay? But when you're trying to get a quick physique, gear is the way to do that. Gear is the way to do that, to get a fast physique transformation and do what you need to do instead of holding off for 5 to 10 years, doing it the natural way when you might have suboptimal test values, okay? So that's my 2 cents. But I'll see you guys in the next one. Like and subscribe. Peace.